Good evening and welcome to the Ed Sullivan Show.
Actually, no, this is another edition of Bayonne Today. I'm actually sitting in here for Andy Ballack, the co-producer, and with me is another co-producer, Diane Brennan, who, by the way, is doubling today
As our guest.
Exactly.
That was not really Kermit the Frog that I was just doing.
I thought it was Topo Gigio.
Ah,
I remember it, Sullivan.
That's out of, Andy pulls that out of his wallet every so often. Topo Gigio.
Really?
Anyway, we're here to talk about Diane's profession and really to talk about current events, which a lot has to do with the real estate market. And Diane is a very active and successful real estate agent. And we're here to talk about her career, the market in Bayonne, what to look for, maybe what not to look for, and hopefully it will encourage some people to get back into the market, that the market isn't as bad as people think it is, especially if you're a buyer.
And especially if you're a buyer, it's the best time to buy.
Best time to buy. Diane, welcome to the show that you sometimes have with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. A little nervous to be on this side of the table, but I'm sure you'll be kind.
Yes, and gentle, as they always try to be. Diane.
Yes.
How did you get to where you are today? I mean, you've had a blossoming career, and you're now been doing real estate for how long?
I'm doing real estate now approximately 15 years.
Now you make me feel real old.
I know.
Now you make me feel real old. But you and Keith were very successful dress designers.
Yes.
Made a lot of people very happy and made them very pretty.
Yes,
for
and I
very
recall,
nice events.
I recall that there was one event as we were leaving town, going through the toll booth, someone stopped you and wanted to know who you were with because Gina had a total, I guess, it wasn't even a makeover. I mean, she was a princess that night. Do you remember that?
It was, I think, the hospital ball.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was quite an event.
Out at Mayfair Farm.
Yeah.
And Keith made her a beautiful gown. I'll
it
never
was
forget
cool
it.
And it was funny because her getup was so different. It was hard for me to find her amongst the crowd.
I remember. Because she wore her hair up on top of her head.
Yeah.
She let my husband style her completely, and she looked absolutely beautiful. We actually have one of the pictures on our mantle at home. But I started, obviously, I was a business owner here in Bayonne. For people that don't know that about me, my husband and I owned a fashion design business for 25 years. We had many different assorted locations in Bayonne. We were one of the last manufacturers in Bayonne. Everything we made was made right here, and we were in every assorted factory space that Bayonne had. We were in Mr. Korenstein's factory.
Oh, I remember that. On Avenue A.
Yes, which is now a one-family house.
Is that all it is?
That's for sale. Yes.
What was the wife's name?
Oh my goodness, Leon and hold on, I can see her face.
Oh, so could I.
Her father built that building.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the history in that building was incredible. And then, of course, it became with all real estate once again, how the face of things have changed in town totally. Leon and Libby Korenstein.
And she was one of the first ones to have one of my signs up high on Avenue A on like it was like a fire escape or the side of the wall.
The fire escape.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she was a sweetheart, real sweetheart. But go ahead, keep going.
So we had any assorted spaces. We were on 8th Street. We watched them knock down the 8th Street station. We had our first studio space was up above the O'Donnell Agency.
Oh, really? On that second floor?
There was a tiny little space up there, maybe 600 square feet.
Yep, little bathroom.
Little bathroom,
Yeah.
very, very large staircase. Still has the beautiful door that the old door that was there. My husband and I had one of those spaces there as our workshop. We were there the day that the tenement buildings down on the corner went on fire. And I took some of the people came into the space with us, and we kind of helped them out because it was a very cold day.
They were built during the Civil War.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Incredible.
And then they went down, and that's another. I mean, it's kind of interesting, and this obviously isn't something we even planned, but when you think about it, as you kind of traverse through town, you see real estate changing the different niches, different areas of town that we've seen in our lifetime happen.
If you recall, and it was really before our time, but it's incredible to think back that 8th Street was the center of Bayonne until it moved north to 22nd Street in that area. But when the railroads all converged and you had the station and there was the, I don't know if it was Armour or Swift had their meat packing place over there, the house on 7th Street in the corner where the stewardesses are now, that whole row of old houses.
The Florence Flats.
All that's,
Florence Flats, yeah.
Amazing. Just
It's amazing.
That whole part.
And now here we've coming full circle to see 8th Street Station being built again, and you have some pretty good real estate there as well. Your office all of the lawyers sat in that part of town quietly.
Who'd have thought?
Whoever would have thought?
Who'd have thought?
I mean, it's a remarkable thing when you see the rail up above. I mean, Keith and I were riding downtown just the other night, and to see the lights up above.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing. Well, I had my clothing design business, and we were in any location in Bayonne that we went from his mother's dining room table, which was in Leo Greshek's house, in between Broadway and Avenue C on 6th Street. That's where we started the business. Then we moved over to the O'Donnell Agency. Then we moved up all the way up across from Top's Diner.
On 32nd?
Yeah, we took a huge space up there. That burnt out. We were burnt out there on Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, a huge fire. Domenico Bus.
Okay.
When they went on fire.
Okay.
Keith and I were up on the top floor. We had just cut all of the spring merchandise because it was,
man.
all whites. We had them piled up, and the dirt and the soot that came up from the Domenico fire. If people remember, Domenico had, they were using it, it wasn't being used the way it should be used, and there was someone sleeping in there, and they used a hot plate, and it caused a fire. So then we had to leave there because that place, we couldn't use that for a business.
Right.
Then we moved over to the Maradas, Sam Maradas.
25th and
A.
Yeah.
He had his factory there where he did the children's clothing on the first floor.
Yeah.
And Keith and I had 2 weeks to find a space. And we went door to door, kind of knocking, it was quite a trek in the middle of the holiday season trying to find a spot. And he said, we've been thinking about combining our businesses upstairs and downstairs. Come back in a couple days, I'll have upstairs cleaned out. Sammy and Joe Murata, and we were very thankful for them.
Joe, they're both, there was another sweetheart people.
They helped us in so many ways. And then Mr. Korenstein came along, and of course there's that little bit of, well, I think I can do it for you cheaper. And Mr. Korenstein had what a deal for us. So we wound up moving, our lease was up, we wound up moving up to Korenstein's, and then that's where we'd have our big factory sales, which a lot of people recall. We'd have a line around the building, women coming in at the end of the season to buy out our closeouts. And then we decided with what got me into real estate was the economy started to shift and change in the early 90s, and we could see that the boutiques that we were selling to all over the country were not paying us. And that will kind of make you realize.
Oh yeah, the economy was starting to tank then. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was I said to Keith, why don't I get my real estate's license? You can keep the store going, because then we opened up our own location on Broadway. We started to we weaned ourselves off of the wholesale business, and then we started to sell exclusively in Bayonne. And Bayonne was very, very good to us. From I think 10 or 12 years, we actually had the store locations.
It's a great location, right by the post office there.
We had the post office. Then we were up in where Berlin's was.
Yeah.
We moved uptown. We had 3,500 square feet and 9/11. Then really changed the way business was happening. There weren't any more holiday parties. There weren't companies.
Oh yeah, real somber. Yeah, real
Everything
somber time.
changed.
Real
No one
somber
wanted
time.
to go out. A depression of sorts kind of started, and we saw a change in our business.
And can you imagine if you were still trying to struggle over these last 2 years, the way the economy really went? You would have been really dying and shocked. And as it is in real estate, wasn't so good either. I mean, not through absolutely no fault of your own. I mean, the economy was just such that selling was not easy. So you go from one tough economy to another tough economy.
But the best part of it is, having had a business and being a business owner, you learn how to reinvent yourself, and you learn to look at benchmarks in the progression of a depression. I mean, if that's a good way to put it.
Or the cyclical nature of it.
Yes, and the thing that now is appealing, it's not easy. It's challenging, I'm used to challenges, is that the interest rates are below 4%. It's the lowest, the interest rates are the lowest they've been in 30 years. So is that a great time to buy? I mean, you do real estate law as well.
A lot. One of the tough parts, we just had a guy come in and his condo went to contract at 272. The appraisal came in at 260.
Yep.
He's got to unload it. We just had to sign a change. He's going to drop it 12,000 because his mother doesn't want to. His mother wants to live peacefully the rest of the years of her life in some place in Pennsylvania. He said, "Believe me, I wouldn't want to move for the life of me, except I have to take care of my mother, and my mother comes first. If my mother passes on, I'm going to be right back in Bayonne and looking for something else." But you know, and how frustrating it is for you because you may have a sale. Next thing you know, it doesn't appraise out.
It happened to me 3 times this summer. 3 times this summer, and we've come to realize now that the appraiser is the one. I can get the number that you want, but
the appraisal is the one. That's right.
I have to say to you know, I mean, as the rules changed, and it has, there are ways to finesse the deal through. But you have to say to your seller now, it's not the market it was 5 years ago. I can sell your house, but I have to tell you, number one, be aware of the fact that once the appraiser comes in and the appraiser says this house isn't worth it, you have to decide for yourself, am I going to take $10,000 less, or do I think I'll put it back on the market hoping to get an all-cash buyer?
And quite frankly, the way the market has been, I had a deal back in. It's not my deal. I do the legal work, but woman was selling her father's house, and there was a $1,500 difference. This is back in November. She put it back in the market. She already dropped the price $15,000.
Yep.
She was really foolish to not take the $1,500, and now she's at a house that's $15,000 less, and we don't even know when that's going to go.
Well, that's part of the business that I'm in. It's changed in many respects because it's not only what you want to sell your house, I list your house. We'll bring in a buyer. The buyer will tell you what they think it's worth. And then the buyer then hears, oh no, well this house isn't worth what you were willing to pay. The buyer could choose to walk then because they feel, well, maybe I offered too much money. But
the one thing I've noticed, though, Diane, is when we get the appraisals in from the buyers, and oftentimes, obviously, if we're doing the seller, we want to see the appraisal because they're looking to say, hey, listen, we're looking to drop the price because it didn't appraise. We really want the house. We can get the mortgage, this and that. As soon as you know that their bank is close or the lender's close, you're not going to want to go back to the well for another year or 6 months.
No.
But here's the bad part. A lot of deals to get those low rates are at that 10%, 5%. What I mean by that is, as you know, a conventional loan, and we've done these shows with Andy Ballack too, conventional purchase is 20% down. If it's a $200,000 house, it's $40,000. $160,000 mortgage, you can go to Provident, Hudson City, BCB, the old Pammerpo, Garden City, Garden State. You would get a mortgage at a conventional rate, all things being equal. Once you pass that line, then you get into the higher risk, the mortgage insurance. You have the FHA standards, and now you get an appraiser who may not even know Bayonne. And that's what's frustrating because you can have a house in, say, Roosevelt Terrace, and all of a sudden they're giving you comps for some other parts, and you're saying, but it's not a comp, but you're stuck with it.
Yep.
And you can't change it for 6 months. That's what you're stuck with. And that's what makes your job even tougher.
Well, see, the interesting thing is being a Bayonne realtor, okay? That's why, and this is a good point to bring up. Many times people think they'll pull realtors in from other areas to sell their houses. Oh, if I get a Hoboken realtor, they're going to be able to sell to people in Hoboken. If I get somebody from Jersey City, they're going to come in, they're going to get me a higher number. Honestly speaking, you're better off having a Bayonne realtor handle Bayonne properties because we know Bayonne.
You could sell Bayonne better.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And when the appraisers come in and start to ask us questions, we're at this point now with all of the changes that have happened with real estate, we're not even allowed to talk to appraisers any longer.
That's right.
We're
Absolutely
not allowed
right.
to talk to them.
You can't show them comps, you can't show them anything, right?
Because they don't want it to seem like you're trying to sway them one way or another. But the point you brought up about specific areas of town where the value is there, but because it's a specific part of town, there is more of a value. They don't know that, and it really has changed an awful lot of the way we're doing business. But the one thing that you brought up about the conventional buyers, there are programs now which we need to talk about, and one of the ones that I had the good fortune of being involved in is the Live Here, Work Here program that is coming from Trenton. You do not have to have a conventional amount of money down. You know, they are favoring first-time home buyers who live in Bayonne or want to live in Bayonne and work in Bayonne. It's not the tax credit that the government was giving, but it is an incentive that can help with your closing costs, also help with your mortgage. So there are new programs that are coming up. Some of it, you know, some of the writing may be a little gray. You're not 100% sure, but it's actually, I'm going to Trenton next week because they're having a seminar for realtors and lenders and anyone basically interested to find out how these programs are working and how they can assist people to buy. So I think the dust needed to settle a little after the real estate market literally hit a brick wall maybe a year ago.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because it's still a soft market. Like you said earlier, it is a buyer's market. If the buyer wants to go out and find something, they will. But I remember the mortgage finance, New Jersey Mortgage Finance Agency, sometimes they came out with a program which was sold out in like 3 days because that time the economy was going crazy. And now it's actually good because it gives people more time to think, I think, you know, where they want to work, where they want to buy, and where they want to stay.
Well, the most interesting part for me, you're asking me about one of the reasons why I became a realtor, obviously, is because we needed a second income when things started to change a little bit with the business that we had. But on the other hand, I started to see changes happening in Bayonne that to me, or I always try to bring out only positive things. We have some negative things every city does. But I've seen the groundwork of what's happening here. Now we're seeing things come to fruition. I mean, just today, I looked at the newspaper and they're talking about the new mall and how many jobs it's going to bring. It's going to bring hundreds of jobs to the city. Interesting
you mention that because people have a tendency to expect things to happen instantaneously, whether it was the development at the base, where they expect the mall. The guy who's running the main job says, you know, we started this in 2002. Here it's 8+ years later. The permits you had to go through, the cleanup you had to go through. We thought we would be in and out in less than 2 years. Things take a long time. And we had that rezoned for highway commercial 15 years ago. And so, and you only have to walk through any place in New York, say Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue, and you start looking at the cornerstones and you realize nothing was built all at the same time. This is built in 1928, this is built in 1912, this is built in 1942. As you start looking at it, damn, things don't happen like that. Rome is not built in a day, and neither will Bayonne be. But you know what? You're looking at quality. You want quality development in there.
Well, the gentleman you're talking about is Eric Alderman. And I was the agent that gave Eric Alderman my famous 5-cent tour.
Cool.
Long before he came into town, I got a call from Nancy Kist, who was down at the base at that time. She said, Diane, this developer is in town. Can you take him out and show him what Bayonne is all about? He sat in my car. I can remember it. I had someone else with him. I don't remember what his name was. I had little coolers with ice water in it. I said, take a seat, and I'll give you the tour. And by the time I was finished showing them, and things were kind of raw back then. It was even before a lot of the development has happened. I took him to the boatworks. This is what's going to happen here. The more he started to look around, he said, you know, this is really going to work. Keep in mind that the roadway that this highway is on, that wasn't even open to the public. For 40.
Oh, part of that was, right, yeah.
I mean, I remember people would use it for skateboarding and rollerblading. You know, now, I mean, I live over on the east side now, and I mean, it's at night it calms down and it's quiet. But in the daytime, you hear those trucks, and you hear all that constant traffic whizzing by.
At 8th Street, we used to hear motorcycles racing along there before it opened up, going 100 miles an hour. You say,
oh, the motorbike, yes.
Hope somebody doesn't crash.
Remember that? The kids would use it as a playground. And now here it is. It's a main artery that's bringing people from Staten Island, from other areas, to come down into Bayonne. They come for 10 East. I mean, it's a great restaurant.
And that's why when even light rail, when they were looking to take some of the park and ride properties, they were looking at some prime locations where I said, you can't go here because we're looking hopefully to do some sort of development that will create jobs, not parking lots. In fact, if where the A&P is, they wanted to go there, and I said, what do you want to do? Bring all the Staten Islanders in and they go home over the Bayonne Bridge? We get all their pollution, we get their parking, and we get none of their money. And so by stretching out 440, which was then 169, it kind of creates it. Now, when Bobby Russo owned the bottle shop, Bridgeview, over there where the gas station is, he told me, he says, you know what, during the week it's New York, during the weekend it's New Jersey, and that's exactly what we're trying to create, an environment where we can capture money for our town.
Exactly. Exactly. And the only way to do that, I mean, back in the day, the only way to get through town was to go street by street by street.
That's it.
And I mean, I've seen with technology, with the speed, it's about speed now, and it's also about one of the favorite words of Bayonne, it's about parking.
Yeah.
Give me free parking, I'll go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people are tired of...
But that will happen too. You know, everything takes a transformation. And again, nobody wants it in their backyard and nobody wants their house to be torn down, and yet redevelopment can only happen if you make some adjustments to what's happening. We still have part of the code. Many towns, you have a Broadway where you have the first strip of stores, and then you have little bypasses where people park in the back, because that's the only way you're going to get stores to have parking to go in and out. In Bayonne, what does it cost? It costs you 2 houses. They cost you 4 houses.
Exactly.
Very expensive, especially when houses were high in 04, 05.
That's it. 05.
It was always high. If you remember,
in 05, yep.
If you really think about Diane, they've always been high. Bayonne always had a very good sustain, and people said, I can't afford Bayonne. In many ways, they said you couldn't afford Bayonne. That's not the case today, but that's not Bayonne's fault. I mean, Bayonne, I think, is competing with the best of them in terms of its price. It's the general economy that's keeping it lower. So.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, I sold this year, I had Bayonne to Bayonne people. I had a lot of people that were renting in Bayonne that work not too far, who wanted to stay in Bayonne, and when they realized the prices were coming down and there were certain programs that they could use, they were happy to stay and to become homeowners. So I have 1, 2, 3, I have 4 out of 5 that were Bayonne renters who now have become Bayonne buyers. And one of the houses, I'll bring it up to you, we're working on this together, talking about parking and talking about the house on 24th Street, 21 West 24th.
Oh, yeah.
Right across the street from the golf course.
Right.
The miniature golf course.
Miniature golf course.
That used to be a parking lot.
That's right.
But then as things changed and the town center started to realize they're generating more money by using it as a golf course.
A little bit of an attraction. You want to have things that people would do during the day.
And have people, and have people come into the area and use it and use the different shops. So, you know, we're always...
And if you, it's funny too, because the original redevelopment program that Bayonne had, there was supposed to be parking behind the stores, but the stores never really worked with the Housing Authority, who was the redevelopment agency at the time, to get that all finished. So I guess the city at the point said, listen, we're throwing our hands up, let's just finish the street and get going. Because we were, quite frankly, and Howard Fitzpatrick will say this to this day, Bayonne was the only redevelopment, urban redevelopment project that actually saw its completion in the entire country.
Really?
The only one whose plans were submitted to HUD and it actually completed everything it said it was going to do. I mean, I gave you a minor exception because that's wasn't considered an item which they considered was that major, meaning the parking. Because if you think about it, even in the 70s, parking was a bit of a bear, but not the way it is today. Everybody's got 2, 3 cars.
Well, that's the point. But see, look at it. I mean, I always take what I'm given. Let's look at it. Reason being, there are more people living here and staying here. You know, not that. I mean, some people move away, and some people come back. You know, lots of people come back.
Part of it has to do with people's lifestyles and change.
Yes.
The younger people, once they realize what the commuting costs and how far it is, way it is, they're going to take advantage of living and working here, or whether it's in the city or Hoboken and Jersey. Because don't forget, Jersey City is now comparable to downtown New York in terms of its attraction for jobs. And I always thought that was a great thing to attract people there who are making money come to Bayonne, very affordable, and a very short hop on the light rail to get down there. But people have to think about their futures too, where they're going to retire to, where they're going to think about other things. And Joe Cooney said it a long time ago. We were doing the city was sued over a zoning case that it approved, and it had to do, I think, with it had to do with a convent that was being knocked down, the St. Vincent's Convent, and those condos were going over there at 47th and Avenue C. And Joe used the term, which I hadn't heard. I was only a lawyer a short time, empty nesters. He says, yes, the people who are living in big houses want to go someplace. They don't want to move out of Bayonne, but they want to go someplace because the house is too big for them. They want to, and that was exactly our situation. The house got to be too big. You want to have a young family go in, take advantage of the size of the house and everything else. And then also age creeps up, and that you get tired of leaves, get tired of snow, get tired of other things. So you want to go into something that's all taken care of for you. But you find this too, as tough as it is, somewhat exciting, because we're in our stretch, Diane. That's how quickly we've gone through time.
I find it exciting. I mean, you know, I found fashion exciting. I mean, I brought some Chanel to the show. I mean, you have to excuse me. I might not.
So you're not giving her arpege. You're using Chanel.
Chanel. I love Chanel. But the point is, I mean, I love fashion. You know, I always will love fashion. My husband is still in fashion. He's at Saks now. You know, we transitioned, our life changed, lives change. We have a grandchild here in Bayonne now, so we wanted to stay in Bayonne. We sold the big house by the park and designed our own home over on the east side. You know, if you're here long enough, you see life cycles, and you see people that I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Jersey City, but when I marvel.
No, you're pretty much Bayonne. I don't think any.
You think?
Yeah, there's.
Can we shake on that?
My point, Diane, is that you can get the person out of Bayonne, but you can't get the Bayonne out of the person.
Okay.
But there are so many people I know who've moved from other cities, and they say, but you're still not Bayonne. You've been here long enough where I doubt that there are very many people who, other than myself, for example, who knew where you're from, that you're not Bayonne. You are part of Bayonne. You've been very much a part of Bayonne.
I always felt, when I came here, I felt that there was so much here that to be thankful for. I grew up on Ocean Avenue in Jersey City and Greenville.
Really has gone through transformation.
I mean, I can't walk in the neighborhood that I grew up in, and that's why when I came here, all of my community involvements and civic involvements, I always tried to stay involved on a volunteer basis, because I felt there's so much here that needs to be nurtured. And I know you've lost a lot, but to me, I just see lots of positive things happening.
There you go. Diane.